So if you can find a way to get a seated position that will allow for an aligned spine. And by an aligned spine, as those of you that have been in my 145 know, yes, it looks straight from the front, but I do want you to allow for the natural curves that should be in your spine, so that from the side view, you should have that little bit of a lumbar curve in the lower back. And you should have a little bit of a kyphotic curve here in your middle back, and then that lordosis here at the cervical spine. So that from the side view, if shoulders stacked or ears stacked over shoulders, shoulders stacked over hip joints. And so it's perfectly fine to, if you need to, the first part, sit on a chair, sit cross-legged, on a block in a variation of hero pose. That's fine. But I'd like to start here with an aligned spine to just set our intentions and get ourselves ready for the practice. So feel free to close your eyes. Just begin to become aware of the thoughts that are currently occupying your mind. You're just watching these thoughts like clouds in the sky. Letting them float on by. And then slowly bring your awareness to the rhythm of your breath. Initially, just checking in with how it currently is flowing. And gradually, if it's easy for you, shift to only nose breathing if you're not doing that already. And begin to smooth out the inhalations and exhalations. Allowing for a full deep inhalation that begins with a belly expanding, the chest opening, and maybe even at the end of your inhalation, the collarbones lift a little bit. And as you exhale the reverse, collarbones relax, chest relaxes, and belly may even draw in and back towards the spine to push the air out. And just continue with that for a few more rounds on your own. And hopefully that with that increased attention on your breath, you have started to slow things down internally so that your practice can be that is more of a work in than a work out. And today's practice, if you've been doing yoga for a while and know I have a lot of poses in your repertoire, let yourself slow down today and just kind of get back to some of the foundation things that I'll go through, and recognize that we'll be building on things. And if you need to, if you feel like, oh, I really need a little extra heat today, then you can throw in a pose, an extra pose here and there, or hold something in a slightly different way that you're already comfortable with. So those of you that were in the 145 might enjoy this other way that I'm going to start us on our back in just a moment and work towards a supine, an on our back Tadasana. So if you have blocks or even a couple of books handy, lightweight books, you wouldn't want something super heavy, then you can also grab those and have them nearby. If you don't, it's fine. You can do this exercise without them. Once you're able to, you're going to come down onto your back. And if you do have that wall, you're going to have your feet at the wall end. And initially, you don't have to be touching the wall, just kind of close. So when we do scoop, you won't have far to go. So safely come all the way down onto your back. And then just kind of wiggle around to get your body comfortable so that it can be heavy, we're going to take on our basic Shavasana position by allowing the legs to be a comfortable distance apart. So we're not worried about together. Maybe the heels are almost as wide as your mat. If that creates a little pain in your back, then just prop the knees up. You can take the feet a little wider, let the knees rest against each other. And then as you start to move up through the pelvis, just kind of check that you have weight evenly distributed between both glutes. You'll naturally have a space under your low back, but if you feel any pinching, you may want to kind of lift the hips up and think about your tailbone shifting towards the foot edge of your mat. It's like it creates a little length. Lower abs can start to draw in just a bit. As you start to scan up, you should hopefully feel both shoulder blades melting into the earth evenly. Your arms are going to be a little bit away from the body with the elbows straight and the palms face up to the sky. And kind of same with your neck. There should be some space between the neck and the mat. But if you feel any pinching or you feel like your chin is sticking up toward the ceiling more than kind of a straight line under your chin with the wall in front of you, then just lift the head, lengthen the neck a bit. Maybe rock it side to side until it finds a spot that allows it to be still. And then you begin to just focus back in on that breath as you let the backs of your legs, the backs of your arms, your torso and your glutes all just surrender to the support of your mat. So releasing that muscular grip from the bones, we're just heavy and surrendering. Noticing if there's a certain side of our body or part of our body that is kind of asking for our attention. That could be an itch, it could be tightness, it could be, I feel like it's not evenly melting into the earth like the other side. It could be a number of things. And this is the body relaxed and heavy, letting gravity help us surrender. We're going to now transition and notice comparison between that position and a Tadasana position on our back. So if there is a wall in front of you, scoot yourself so that you can plant the soles of your feet against that wall. If you don't have a wall, normally your feet, when they're relaxed, are going to be in what's kind of called a plantar flexion. The ankles are relaxed, but you're going to have to use your muscles just a little bit to bring the ankles into neutral. So you're going to require a little dorsiflexion, is what that's called, to bring the ankles so that there's like a 90-degree bend there with the toes to the sky. If you do have that wall, then you can actively try to press all four corners of each foot against that wall, which may require a little bit more scooting. And the distance between your feet, now we're going to move it in to where your feet are about the same as your hips, hip width apart, toes to the sky, kneecaps to the sky. And if we don't involve the muscles with that, then you might notice that the feet kind of, especially if you don't have a wall, they start to relax again, that the legs want to roll out away from each other. But we're going to do the opposite. We're going to engage our legs. So filling the backs of your legs, the calves and the hamstrings, press down into the mat. And when you do that, you may have noticed that your quads firmed up, which pulls the kneecaps up towards your pelvis a little bit. And that'll also prevent, especially if you don't have the wall, the outer ankles rolling out and down towards the mat. So you're pressing down into the mat with the calves, the hamstrings, the back of your thighs. Move your awareness up to the pelvis And sometimes when you do that, you increase that arch again under your low back. And you're like, that's a little too far. That's not a neutral pelvis. So you can take your hands or use your lower abdominal, your core muscles to, again, lengthen that tailbone towards the feet, decreasing the space under the low back. You're now going to engage the glutes just a little bit, firming it up enough to help the legs keep neutral. As you take a deep breath in, you'll feel your chest expand. And as you exhale, bring those lower ribs a little bit down towards the mat, allowing them to sink down, and maybe even lift and spread your shoulder blades a little wider away from each other. We're going to move our arms closer to our body, so almost touching our sides. Palms are still to the sky, but this time I want activity in the arms. So you're actively pressing the backs of your arms, the upper arms, the lower arms, and even the backs of your hands into the mat. So you're going to start to feel a lot of work here. I mean, we're laying down, but we're really engaged here with all of our muscles that I've talked about so far. Make sure that you're still breathing. And as you press the backs of your shoulders into the mat, that'll create a little bit of more space across the upper chest. Maybe lift the head if you need to lengthen the back of your neck so that your eyes are, if you looked straight up without straining, you'd see the ceiling. Don't want your chin too tucked or tilted up and back. So add a little pressure into the back of the head's pressing into the mat. As you keep breathing, continue, check that the legs are still active, pressing into the mat with your upper back, back to the arms, back of the head. And feel all of those muscles that are engaged here that we want engaged, even if we were doing our standing Tadasana, our standing mountain pose. So this gives you another way to practice the pose or teach the pose if you're going into that direction. And you don't have to fight gravity, you don't have to fight postural habits as much, and can really find some of the places that work well to make this a very active pose. Okay, relax for just a minute. Notice how your body changed. Your fingers probably rolled up a little bit. Okay. And we're going to do that one more time. So start at your feet. If you have the wall, press into it. If you don't, just toes to the sky. Backs of the legs pressing into the earth. Pelvis finds its neutral, glutes engaged. Upper back spread, pressing into the mat across there and down the length of your arms, into the backs of the hands and into the back of your head, and breathe. So muscles are engaged, but breath is continuous. And relax. So feel those muscles, and we'll repeat that down the road in our standing Tadasana. But now we're going to change things up a little bit. And I'm going to have you bend both knees if they're not already bent. And take your right leg towards your chest. Maybe rotate the ankle around each way 1 or 2 times. And take the hands to the outside of the shin and pull that knee down towards your armpit. Release that right foot to the floor, knee is bent, and bring the left knee into your chest. And again, rotate that ankle around. Wiggle the toes, spread the toes. And then you can take that kneecap down towards the left armpit. And bring that foot back to the mat. Gonna go back to that Tadasana position, but if you happen to have that block, you're gonna hold it between your hands so that your hands are on the ends. The widest part is between you. And if you do not have a block or a book that works for this, that's okay. You're just gonna hold your arms about shoulder width apart. Return your legs to that Tadasana position. And find where you need to make your adjustments. And take your imaginary block, if you don't have a real one, and bring it down to the kind of pelvis, upper thigh area. Your palms are going to be pressing against the block. As I do that, again, I find that my lower abs forgot to engage and I need to draw them in to help decrease some space under my low back. And I kind of knit my lower ribs down as well to help with that. My goal now is to maintain the integrity of those areas as I lift my arms up overhead, keeping the wrists neutral, the elbows straight. See how far you can go before your ribs start to poke out. And if you feel that, stop for a minute, draw them back down towards the earth, and only go as far as your shoulders can allow for comfortable movement. Now the body's engaged, there's lots of muscles, but it shouldn't be pain. Maybe the block touches, maybe it doesn't. Check what happened to the ribs, the legs, engage where you need to. And then slowly as you exhale, bring it all the way back up, over, and down. Okay. So we're gonna do that a few times. You just take it at your pace. My pace may be very different because of our breathing rates, but your inhale is to first engage and bring the block up and over. And your exhale is returning it back over and down towards the legs. What is this like? This is like going from Tadasana into Utthita Hastasana. So you can keep doing it one or two more times, just really trying to find a way to keep the integrity of your torso while breathing and doing the movement. If you find that even laying down, your shoulders are coming up closer to your ears, then maybe you stop short of going all the way back. You draw them back down and away, and maybe you don't go all the way over. So we're just trying to figure out what is our range on our back and what catches us. One last time, if you're on my pace. And then just place the block next to you after you finish that round. Awesome. Okay, while we're on our back, I want to do one more thing that is going to also kind of remind us of an area that is often tight and that we tend to use a lot in our yoga class. So if you happen to have a strap, a scarf, a belt, great. If you don't, you can use your hands for this. I happen to have one, so I'm going to use it. We're going to start with both knees bent, and we're moving towards a hamstring stretch carefully. I'm going to start on my left side because the wall often over here gets in my way. And just take the strap and place it under the ball of your foot. Again, I've got my right knee still bent because I want to start with a straight left leg and slide my hands far enough down that I like to have the back of my arms on the floor. It just gives me a little bit more stability. I'm going to, if my back allows for it, everyone's different, take the other leg now straight out and really plant down firmly through that back of my right leg. Engage my core to keep my low back where it should be. And then I'm going to walk my hands up the mat. Now, I don't know what you've done before this class, so if you've been sitting all day, the hamstrings are probably going to be tight. If you have an old injury like I do, it might not go very far no matter what you do. So we're looking for a stretch, and look mostly for a stretch in the meaty part of your hamstring. If you're feeling a lot just behind the knee joint itself, or way up here near your sit bones, maybe back off a little bit. I'm more interested in trying to find a stretch in the meaty part of your hamstrings. So when you get to that part of the stretch, again, slide your hands if you have a strap down. You can also be doing this, by the way, holding onto the back of your leg. I forgot to show you that. But if you do have a strap, it allows your hands not to have like a death grip on the strap. Back of the arms relaxed, hands just holding it enough to keep it where you need that stretch. And take a few rounds of breath. Check that you're still pressing down through the back of your right leg. And just notice with each breath what happens through that leg. Any sensations, any changes. Now we're going to move into a side stretch, but we're not going to do a spinal twist, so just move slowly with me. If you're holding on with your hands, you're going to just hold on with your left hand, and you can take the right hand out to the side. If you do have a strap, you can transition so that both of the ends of the strap are in your left hand. I want you to maintain some weight and energy through the length of your right leg and that right glute. If I don't, I'm going to end up kind of lifting up and doing a spinal twist. I'm not looking for that. Instead, I'm wanting to get more of an inner thigh stretch on the left. So keeping that powerful right leg down, you can start to open up the right leg to the side, moving slowly enough, and you can use the other hand to help guide, that you stop before that right side lifts up. So it's not likely to go down all the way to the floor, and that's fine. And just breathe there for a moment. Hopefully you've gotten to a place where you're feeling some stretch along the inner left thigh. And now you're going to bring it back up to neutral using your hands to help. And same thing, we're going to go to the right, but it'll be a lot less distance, because again, I'm not looking for a spinal twist. I'm looking for a big stretch on the outer thigh. And that happens pretty quickly depending on what's happening with your IT band and some of those muscles there. So just to see how I'm not going very far at all. I already feel it. I'm stopping right there and breathe. Try to let the left glutes settle down into the mat. And then bring this leg back up. And you can release the strap, bring the knee into your chest for a moment. And then left knee bent, left foot on the mat. Extend the left and just take a moment to notice the difference between the two legs. Maybe you don't feel a difference, but I feel like just vibration. I feel like energy, things moving in my left leg. My right leg just feels kind of still heavy and stiff. So I don't know about you, but I've got to do my right leg. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Bring your right knee in first. And again, if you know you have back issues, maybe you start with that left knee. If you don't, I'm okay with you starting with it straight. Strap around the ball of your right foot, but start low enough that you can get a straight right knee rather than have to adjust. So we're going to start low. Engage the muscles of that powerful left leg. It's pressing down into the earth. Both glutes are pressing down into the earth. And then you can start to walk the hands, either pull the leg up or pull the strap up. Again, looking for the stretch in the meaty part of your hamstring. Relax the shoulders, maybe let the backs of your arms settle down into the mat. Relax your face and breathe when you get to that stretch. Maybe even close your eyes. Great. Now we're going to transition and take the right leg out to the right. I kind of have a wall in my way, so not sure how far I'll go, but remember, we're not twisting. Both sides of the body is staying evenly planted from the pelvis all the way up to the shoulders. And you can use both hands or one hand to guide it to that place where you are able to keep both hips still down. Maybe you notice a difference on this side. You're just noticing, not really anything else, just saying, huh, this side feels different. And now start to bring that leg back up to center. Pause there, make sure everything's grounded down both sides evenly. You can take your right hand out to the side to kind of help counterbalance as we start to just take a little ways. Remember, it's not going to take very far at all, especially if you really are trying to keep that right side down to feel a stretch in the outside of your right leg, especially up in the thigh area. I've had a few things that kind of have been obstacles, and I really feel this. I need this so bad. So I'm appreciative of this class starting as probably as much as many of you. Okay, come back up to center. You can take the strap away, bring the knee into your chest. And then release that foot down. Come back briefly to just a basic Shavasana position. You don't have to get too many details. I just want you to tune into how the legs feel. Cool. Okay, gonna bend both knees and just allow yourself to roll over onto one side and kind of keep making your way all the way over to your stomach, propped up on your elbows. So if you need to scoot a little bit away so that the tops of your feet can plant into the earth, shoulders are going to be over the elbows, back or tops of the legs, front of the legs are going to be pressing down into your mat, including the tops of your feet. Outer ankles may want to be lazy and go out to the mat, so you're going to lift them up so they are in line with the inner ankles. And then just kind of feel the lower pelvis start to sink into your mat. Bring your awareness to the forearms and feel the pressure of your arms into the mat, all 10 digits into the mat. And then you're not going to really move maybe a millimeter or something, but as you bring the elbows kind of back towards you and your chest up and forward, you may feel a little bit of a stretch and more power. The gaze can be straight ahead or tiny bit up, but we want a nice smooth curve from the base of our skull all the way down through that upper back. Might feel a little stretch in the lower frontal abdominal area. You're breathing. Still have energy through the legs. Good. And we're gonna just bring the side of our head, it doesn't matter which side, down to the mat, because we'll have a chance to the other side. Let the arms come by your side with the palms up, and the arms can just be comfortable here so that you can relax fully. I have to be careful so I don't lose my earbuds. Take a couple of breaths there with one ear on the mat. And then lift your head enough to bring, as if you were going to put your chin down, but we're not. We're going to do a little activity to strengthen our upper back. So chin is off the mat. Bring your arms by your side, palms against your thighs. Bring the legs together. Pretty close. Base of the big toes can be touching. Start to reach the fingertips as if you're trying to reach that wall where your feet are, so the wall behind you. Roll the tops of the shoulders, the front of the shoulders away from the earth, and see if you can lift up just a little ways. Be careful that you're not trying to lead with your head. We're just using those upper back muscles to pull us off the mat a little bit. Pinkies reaching to the sky, palms reaching towards each other, and gaze just slightly up. And you're breathing on top of that. So a lot of energy and power here. So you might feel yourself rise and fall with each breath. Take one more inhale. And as you exhale, you're going to turn your head the other way and let the ear and the side of your head rest on the mat. The arms relax, feet relax. Lift your head up, rotate so the chin would be on the mat, but we're not going to take it there. Hands under the shoulders, tuck the toes under, And slide the hands back a little bit, just pressing into a hands and knees position. As you adjust, you'll work to allow the hips to be over the knees. And I've got a pretty thick mat. See how it feels to your knees. You may need an extra mat or a blanket or something under your knees. And so feel free to get up and adjust for that. I'm gonna have us tuck our toes under for now. And again, lift those outer ankles. Also check about your shoulders are over the wrists. And you're pressing through all 10 digits. Fingers spread, but not so wide that you feel discomfort. Maybe glance back, knees are hip width apart. And just see, without maybe changing much, where your belly is, how your back feels. I'm gonna try to find a basic neutral position. So if you relax into what's called a cow pose, your belly starts to sink, your shoulder blades get closer, your tailbone lifts, your gaze goes up towards the wall in front of you. And then you can go the reverse of that for the opposite extreme by exhaling into a cat pose. So you start to spread through the shoulder blades, your chin towards your chest, scoop the tailbone under, gazing back at your thighs. We're gonna go to each extreme one more time, of course, short of pain, just finding your range here through the spine. So inhaling, moving past neutral to feel some more distance between the rib cage, top of your pelvis, spreading across the collarbone, gazes forward. And exhale, drawing the chin in towards your chest, starting to round the back, scooping the tailbone under, and breathing into that space a little back of your body. And then inhale, come back to somewhere in between, a fairly neutral position. Abs will still be involved, otherwise you probably will sink. So you keep the lower abs in. Okay. So from here, we're gonna go into puppy dog. This is an expression of variation of downward facing dog that you can always choose instead of downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. And to do that, again, your choice. If your toes are getting tired of tucked under, you could change it and press into the tops of your feet. Hips will stay high as we start to walk our hands forward. And you'll continue walking forward. It may be that you want to pause at forearms, or maybe you can continue so that you're bringing your chest and your chin toward the mat, maybe not to the mat. If you feel any discomfort in shoulders, back out of it. Take the hands a little wider. And then again, tailbone stays up and high, breathing as you allow your chest and chin to move toward the mat. If you feel like you can somewhat relax in this position, just stay right there and breathe. If you feel discomfort, back it out, bring your forearms to the mat, and you can do a variation that way. You should be getting a powerful stretch through the shoulders. On your next inhale, lift your chin, slide the elbows back, and then the hands to the mat, back to all fours, hands and knees. Okay, let's give those wrists a break. So I'm gonna have you take your right hand and only go as far as you can. Rotate the fingers as if you're trying to point them towards the outside edge of your mat and continue around as far as they'll go. Maybe they end up pointing towards your right thigh. And see if you can weight bear through that entire palm. Breathe. If you don't feel enough of a stretch, you could always shift your hips back a little bit, but likely you're feeling something pretty good right there. This is a great stretch to do frequently because we do a lot with our wrists. And if you have been on a keyboard or not really stretching the wrist out, you can go ahead and rotate that back around. Then you may feel that some of these poses, you'd be like, oh, I'm really feeling this wrist. So we're gonna do the other side now. So just turn the left fingertips out and around, maybe so they're facing the thigh. Again, one side may feel different. So just notice that. And sometimes in my own practice, if one side does feel tighter and I feel like, gosh, I really need to stay there an extra couple of breaths, then I will. And we're going to turn those fingertips back around. One more thing for the wrists. We're now going back to the right side, and I'm going to lift it up so that the back of my hand is on the mat and fingers are pointing towards my thigh. I don't add a whole lot of weight here, but I do feel the stretch. The back of my hand is down, but I'm not like pushing down into it. And same thing, if you need more stretch, you can shift your hips back. We're taking the wrist into flexion. A lot of what we do in yoga is wrist extension. This is called wrist flexion. I use a little bit more anatomical terms in this activity class than I would in a studio or something, because I know some of the students in this class are working towards teaching, and it's helpful sometimes to review some of the concepts and topics we've done. And then release that right hand back to its original starting position in hands and knees. And you do the same thing on the left hand. So we're going to pick it up, allow the back of the hand to gently rest on the mat. Fingers are pointing towards the toes. And breathe. And then place it back in its original position. We're back to hands and knees. Let's give the shoulders a break. Moving into just traditional Balasana Child's Pose, just bring the big toes together and start to allow the hips to settle back and down, probably kind of slightly on the heels, slightly between the heels. And we're going to take the arms all the way back by our legs, palms to the sky, and slowly round the back, chin towards the chest, just past the hairline. So top of the head, not too far back, is on the floor. Shoulders release towards the floor. And scan. Maybe this is more bend than your knees want. And you go, you know what? I need to get a little blanket and put it in there. Maybe your head doesn't like to be this low, and you could take your forearms on the mat and lift it off and rest. And you can circle out the wrists. Take the hands back out in front. One more time, hands and knees. We're going to do a baby downward facing dog. So if you have that wall behind you, you may want to adjust after we get into downward dog, but it sometimes is a nice little feedback to have that wall nearby. So fingers spread wide, tuck the toes under. We're going to all keep our knees quite bent for the initial part of our pose. Lift the knees and let them hover a couple inches off the mat. Feel those abs engaged, the core muscles working. We're going to maintain the alignment of the spine as we start to shift our hips up and back. So our chest is coming back as well towards the wall behind us, towards our thighs. Head becomes heavy, elbows are straight. So again, knees are bent generously, heels are off the floor, chest is reaching towards the thighs. And as I exhale, I make sure there's space between my ears and shoulders, that my thumbs and index fingers are still pressing into the earth. Maybe shake out the head. Notice how your spine feels. It's aligned, it's long, it feels good. Try to maintain that and see if the heels want to get a little closer to the floor by straightening the knees without losing that feeling that you have in your spine. So if you start to feel like, oh wait, my low back's rounding, then bend the knees again. And just see where you are with it. Again, I don't know what you've done today, so this could feel really stiff. You don't usually go right into downward dog without stretching. All right, and now we're gonna just pedal it out. So I'm gonna bring that left heel a little closer, right knee stays bent, and then switch. I'm gonna lift that left heel up high and bring the right heel closer. And you can go back and forth a few times. And then find a static position for your downward dog, whether heels are up or down, and breathe. Belly is in. Think about making a V position, and if you have that wall, you can scoot your heels back to feel them, the back of your heels against the wall, feet hip width apart. Bend the knees. and allow them to come back to the earth. Take your right knee forward to bring that right foot on the floor. It can be on your fingertips. I like to then take my back foot, tuck the toes under, and scoot that knee back a little bit. So instead of being directly down on the top of my kneecap, I've almost come to my thigh. I've almost come to the very top edge of my kneecap and into the thigh muscle. And then I'm going to press the top of my foot back down. Right knee's lined up over the ankle. You could have hands on block, but if available to you, go ahead and bring hands up to heart center. And now if I just kind of let things just be how they wanted to be, this would happen. And I'm not going to feel anything in the front of my left thigh, but I could feel a stretch. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to shift back. So shoulders are over hips, and hip is a little bit in front of that back knee. But while engaging those lower ab muscles and drawing my tailbone toward the earth, I start to feel a stretch in the front of my left thigh. I could intensify that stretch by shifting my weight forward. I'm not then dropping the pelvis. I'm keeping it in neutral, but just getting a little bit more hip extension by bending more into my right knee. If you prefer, hands can be at the waist. And breathe. How do you make this even more fun, you ask? Well, if you wanted to get even more into that left thigh, takes a little balance, so you could always have a block over here. You could, with your strap or with your hand, bend that left knee and reach back. This is intense, so listen to your body. You can always walk that right foot over a little bit. Keep breathing. So if you were worried today, like, oh my gosh, we're going to be doing headstands and we're going to be doing things, you're not. We want to build that foundation. And like I said, if you've been doing yoga a while, it's just sometimes nice to take a break from all the hard stuff and just get back to foundation. Okay, we're going to now shift our hips back and move into more of a hamstring calf stretch. So sometimes this is another place that blocks or books can come handy to place on each side of your leg that's in front. In this case, it's my right. And just gives me a little bit more support. I'm my right forward. And then allow that knee to become straight with the toes toward the sky. Activity through that leg. Long, tall spine. And all I'm going to do is hinge at my right hip joint, my hip crease, to come forward towards that outstretched right leg. And then I could either change my blocks to be lower, or I could have my hands on the floor. But I'm not trying to round and get to my leg. Again, I'm trying to keep my spine aligned and really focus on getting a stretch behind my right leg. Engaging the quads just a little bit, not too much. You don't want to feel any pinching. And then experiment with trying to bring the ball of your foot down, and that gets a neat little spot along the front of your shin, those muscles. If you run, that feels good. I don't run, but it still feels good. And then let that foot up. You're going to bring the right knee back. Bring the left foot forward. If you want to, you can tuck the toes under, scoot that knee back just a little bit to go more almost above the kneecap. Top of the foot back down, hands up to heart center. And same thing occurs. Belly draws in, tailbone releases down. I already feel my stretch. Do I want more? Maybe. Shift my weight forward just a little bit, deeper bend in the left knee. Do I need even more? Maybe. I can reach back and reach for the top of that right foot with a strap on my hand. I then like to actually then pull that shoulder forward, so I'm not twisting. Still breathing. Noticing some perhaps neat little sensations wiggling around the front of that right thigh. And then you can release that foot down. Gonna shift our hips back so that we get that left knee straight, toes to the sky, spine aligned. And then if we are needing more of a stretch, we can hinge forward. Stop when you feel that first point of resistance and breathe. Maybe inhale, come out of it slightly. Readjust by pulling the crease at the top of the left thigh back just a bit. And then one more exhale, a little bit deeper perhaps. If you'd like to experiment with bringing the ball of that left foot closer to the earth for a little change up, left knee still straight, you can do that now. And then toes back up, left knee back, blocks out of the way, hands and knees. Okay, can take it one more step farther. Right foot forward, fingertips on the mat out on each side of the right foot. Lengthen the spine, tuck the back toes under. Option of lifting that back knee. And then option of lifting the torso up, hands at heart center. So we're in a little bit more of a balance challenge here. Now, if you're there, bend that left knee a little bit. Reconnect with that lower abs and lengthen the tailbone, just like we did when the nail was on the ground, the knee was on the ground, but you're a little more challenged here, right? So if you have a wall or a chair, feel free to use it. And then while maintaining the integrity of those lower abs engaged, see if that left knee will go straight. And wow, I feel a pretty darn good stretch. Hands can be at the waist, at the heart. This is a pretty powerful pose, just really great for strengthening the front leg, hamstrings and glutes, stretching the quads and hip flexors of that left leg. Let's bring the hands down. You can lower the left knee first, bring the right knee back, and left foot forward. So feel free to use your left hand to get that foot up there. You know, you want knee over ankle. I'm on my fingertips. Tuck my right toes under. Scoot the knee back first, and then try lifting the knee. Bring it back down. We could do the side a little different just to change it up. With the knee down, bring hands to heart. Just gonna kind of feel it opposite. This time as we lift up, we already have the right knee bent. So lift up just a little ways. Find the work of those lower abs. You'll feel that left glute squeeze just a little bit. And then keeping the right kneecap facing, or left kneecap straight ahead. See if you can take that right knee a little straighter, as if you're trying to bring that right heel and glue it down to the mat. Still breathing. Good. Nice. Okay, we're going to bring the hands back to the mat. And this time we're going to step the right foot forward next to the left. Keep the feet hip width apart, knees generously bent, and just surrender to a forward fold. So let the head become heavy. You can just let the hands hang down, or elbows bend, hands at the creases, maybe even sway a little bit side to side. And then release the hands towards the floor, come up to the fingertips. Drop the hips enough to lift the torso off of the thighs and have a really nice, strong aligned spine here. So your gaze is down. Crown of the head is reaching toward the wall in front of you, tailbone reaching towards the opposite wall. I feel a lot of activity in my thighs because I do have my knees bent quite a bit, but I do have an aligned spine, belly drawn in. I'm going to keep that aligned spine, but slide the fingertips up my shins to get my knees almost straight, not completely straight. And then I'm gonna pull the front of the shoulders away from the earth and away from the ears. Gaze is still down. All my core muscles, front body, back body, side body working. And then to come all the way up to standing, depending on your back and situation, you could bend the knees a little bit first and bring hands to heart and just hinge up, or from where you are, hands to heart, and just use those back muscles to straighten through the hips and the knees. And now we're in a standing Tadasana. I'm going to turn to face you. You don't have to turn at all. But now we're pretending we're laying down, but we're now standing. So getting the feet pretty close. More importantly, outer edges parallel to each other. Spread the toes. All four corners of each foot pressing into the earth. And then activity of the legs. Neutral pelvis. Broad chest. Powerful arms. Fingertips reaching to the earth. And chin parallel to the earth. Soften your face. Crown of the head reaching to the sky. Eyes opened or closed as you breathe. Great. With eyes open, turn the palms towards your thighs. Feel the chest stay open, abs involved, and just imagine that block between your hands. We're not going to get it off the floor. So maybe bring the hands a little bit more in front of you so that you can imagine that block there. And start to lift your imaginary block up. But you're going to have to work even harder, keeping the shoulders away from the ears. I'm going to stop pretty low because I feel that my lats are already tugging and my shoulders want to do that. So I'm stopping kind of low. Reconnect with my breath, lengthen my tailbone, abs in. Inhale, maybe a little bit higher. If you feel pain, widen the hands. As you exhale, release the hands all the way around behind your back and interlace the fingers. Try to straighten the elbows, bring the base of the palms together, and maybe bring the hands and arms away from your body. I'm not releasing into a pelvic tilt. I'm keeping my low back lengthened. Gaze is straight ahead. Inhale and exhale. One more inhale here. And exhale, release the hands. You can turn to face the long edge of your mat. And if you have those blocks or a book, I'm going to place them just beyond the edge of your mat. We're going to be forward folding and need those for our hands. This is our last pose. See how quickly an hour flies? Okay, so we're going to take the legs pretty wide. I don't want you to feel like you're slipping. Start with the outer edges parallel to each other. So the outer edges are parallel with the ends of your mat, parallel to each other. Hands at the waist, thighs are super strong. If your ankles will allow it, start to spin your heels out. So the heels are now closer to the short, long edges of your mat. Toes are slightly in, legs are still strong. Use your pinkies to feel that hip crease. And as you inhale, shoulders down, spine lengthens. Exhale, feel only at that crease change. Spine is aligned, legs are strong. And I can bring my hands either to my blocks or to the floor under my shoulders. As you inhale, lift the chest a little bit farther away from the floor, re-engage those quads, lift up on the kneecaps. And exhale, sink back down into that deeper forward fold. You can leave the hands right where they are today. Again, inhale, come slightly out of it. Toes are spread, feet pressing evenly. Exhale, forward fold, head heavy. Press through the hands, inhale, straighten the elbows. Exhale, You can place, maybe we're going to spin the heels all the way in. So now heels come in, toes are out, so that we can bend our knees, one hand on one knee, pushing it wide, other hand on the other knee to help you come up all the way to straight. Okay, heel toe or walk the hands together briefly into Tadasana. And we're just going to come down into our mat. Find that comfortable seated position. So day one, super workshoppy, not many poses, but good to find those muscles again and feel how well they can help you maintain the integrity of poses, to keep your poses alive and feel how much you are involved in the safety and alignment of your pose by engaging those muscles and tuning into the breath. So I said an hour, so if you need to go, bye-bye. Thank you for being here. But for those that have the time, I'm just going to lead us into a very brief Shavasana to assimilate what we've done. And you could also watch this during the replay if you'd like. So coming down onto your back. Just like we did at the beginning of class. So start with the legs and move them about the width of your mat. Maybe wiggle them in and out. Spread the toes, relax through the ankles, the backs of your legs. Bring your awareness to the hips and feel the glutes relax and sink into the earth. Upper back spread, some space beneath the low back. And the arms extended, straight, but away from the body, slightly palms to the sky. Back of the head gently resting. Feel all the muscles of your face soften and release as the lines and the signs of tension dissolve. Feel the tongue relax away from the roof of your mouth. Maybe just imagine you resting on some warm sand and that the shape of the sand perfectly supports every curve of your body. Its warmth encouraging you to just melt and surrender. Your body now still. Your breath finding its own natural rhythm. And your attention can just come back to the rhythm of your breath or joy. As other thoughts come into your mind, imagine them like clouds and the wind takes them away as you return your awareness to joy. If you have extra time, you can mute me now and remain in your Shavasana for as long as you like. The stillness gives your body a chance to assimilate all that you've done. Direct the energy where it needs to go. To come out of your Shavasana, start to bring the awareness back to your body. Imagine a cool breeze as you wiggle the fingers and toes and feel the crisp, cool, refreshing air. Maybe move the tongue around inside your mouth and your eyes behind your eyelids. And then turn your head side to side, noticing the new peace and calmness of your mind. And with the head still, now start bending your knees, walking the feet in closer to your body. Lift your hips and lengthen your low back. Hips back to the mat. You can roll over onto one side and linger there for a moment with your ear on your hand close or your arm closest to the floor. You can use the other hand now to press you back up to a seated position. Feel free to keep your eyes closed as you once more find that aligned spine in a seated position. And bring your hands back to heart center. And give a little bit of thanks to yourself for taking the time out of your day to do a work in. Thank you guys so much.